in this episode, but we'd like to maybe start, and if you don't mind sharing, of getting your side of the story of the time you were banned from the Man United press conference. And I guess first, I mean, how did it feel considering it was from Sir Alex Ferguson, one of the greatest managers ever? And then also, secondly, were you ever able to make amends with him?
So I suppose this is now dating back to 2011. It's the days before the Champions League final at Wembley against Barcelona. And, you know, in my mind at that sort of time, it was obviously a pretty significant story involving Ryan Giggs. He'd just been named in Parliament as the subject of a super injunction. So he tried to sort of keep his affair away from the media. So, you know, first of all, you could look at it as being a completely private story. At one point, he was being speculated about online. We as journalists couldn't name Ryan Giggs. But then this is a story that sort of moved beyond sport and, you know, football generally, because you had a player being named in Parliament like this. And, you know, people would debate the merits. Should he have actually been named? Wasn't it abuse of parliamentary privilege to name him? But regardless, we're sort of days out from a Champions League final, and Ryan Giggs is front page news. So basically it was unavoidable to actually mention. And I suppose in part because of my news background too, I was thinking, you know, we can't possibly not bring this up. So we were at Carrington United's training ground on the, I think it was the Tuesday of that week. And we're all in there thinking, how do we bring up the issue of Ryan Giggs? And we can't not ask about it. I mean, it would be completely dereliction, not only journalistically, but also it was the thing the public and politicians and everyone was talking about. So I was thinking, well, what is the smoothest way into it? Hopefully, what's the sort of the least combative way into actually getting Ryan Giggs into conversation? So I thought, as long as Sir Alex Ferguson is at least talking about Ryan Giggs, that is something. We don't need to actually initially ask about the allegation or the super injunction. So I came up with the most basic question, I thought, which was, Ryan Giggs is your most experienced Champions League player. This will be his third final. Just how important is he to you? So quite innocuous in a way, loaded because it's clearly asking about Giggs, but also giving Sir Alex Ferguson the means to answer it however he wanted to, and then potential follow-ups. And he sort of generally answered that all the players are important to me, rather than him sort of seizing the moment, perhaps to sort of take ownership of the situation in some way and just to sort of answer in some sort of, you know, less confrontational way. And then what was picked up was he was caught by a Sky microphone whispering to his press officer, we'll get him, we'll ban him for asking the question. But
that initial question.
Yeah. So I didn't know at the time. It was only actually later on that we heard it, because we couldn't hear or even really see who was saying anything at the time at the front of the room. In the meantime, someone did attempt to sort of follow up the question with a follow-up from one of the news channels and didn't get anywhere that I have of my memory. So then I was sort of by the pitch. It was a part of open training when someone from broadcaster then came up to me to say that they'd picked up on this audio. So I then actually had to sort of flag up to my office that something might be coming out of some significance here, but I didn't quite anticipate just how great it would be in terms of the impact. The fact it was on television news bulletins, a day with Syria being pretty significant in the news, and there it was being sort of carried as sort of breaking news, probably because it was, you know, I think the only time that Sir Alex Ferguson had been caught on camera, maybe sort of lashing out at a journalist, even though I couldn't hear it at the time. And then it was sort of front page news, some of the papers, back page news in the coming days as well. And what Ferguson managed to do, rather than sort of just disarming the issue, taking ownership of the issue, was he inflamed the issue and made it a sort of bigger talking point even about Giggs and the super injunction, because he gave it extra legs as a story by the way he responded to me. We'd never addressed it directly between us. I had been at things with him, have spoken to him, have interviewed him, asked him questions in later press conference at things like his book launch. In fact, he was standing in front of me in the winners' enclosure at Cheltenham just a few weeks ago as well, on Gold Cup Day. But, you know, I never made much out of it at the time. I just let the coverage pan out. I didn't do any interviews about it, probably wisely from my company side at AP. They advised and said not to, which was pretty sensible because it didn't look like I was milking the situation in any way. The coverage was already sort of largely, you know, I think sympathetic to my position already. So, you know, I did field many interview requests at that moment, and, you know, probably helped me in terms of Manchester United, I'd hope, not seeming to be milking it. So, you know, the ban was then informed to me weeks later at the start of the new season. We did obviously try and challenge it. I wasn't necessarily going to a lot of those pre-weekend Alex Ferguson press conference anyway. And I think 2 years down the line, actually in 2013, I ended up doing things like the last interview with David Gill as Manchester United chief executive, which he actually, just before Ferguson retired, did in his answer give a slight indication that that might be looming.